All right, chat, don't you hate when your combos end up doing things like this? You put in all that work for that fancy combo, and you get literally, how much damage was that? 870 damage for all these different meters, drive rush cancels. There's 3 drive rush cancels, 3 bars of super meter in there, and all you get out of it is a measly 870 damage. Well, you might be laughing at this combo. This is a bit extreme, but I'm here to tell you that doing bad combos actually does have a significant cost, and there's a hidden reason behind this that some players aren't that aware of. And if you're thinking right here, hey, I'll just out-footsie my opponent, I'll just win neutral more often, even if I have bad combos, I don't need the damage, I'll win in the neutral interactions like a player like Punk. Well, you should know that Punk is not immune to this phenomena either.
Oh no, he was out of range for the throw. There's the punish counter. He needed that. He needed that hit stun.
Goes for the OD hooligan grab. Combo conversion to the CA. It's in the yellow. He's standing up. He's popping off. But it's not enough. Racing back down to his seat. Y'all know the rest. Throw the fireball. Anti-air DP. XiaoHai takes the set. So yes, you might think you can just out-nooch the best of the best, but in the end, even a nooch god like Punk the God himself has fallen victim to doing bad combos, costing him key high-stakes sets. So today, we're going to go over the #1 reason why your combos are bad and how to fix that. Let me show you an example to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Okay, so to demonstrate this phenomenon, I'm going to show 2 combos with Sea Viper, and I'd like you, chat, to tell me what the difference is between the 2, okay? Okay, there's one combo, combo #1, and here's combo #2. Can anyone tell me the difference and why one of these is a bad combo and one of these is a good combo? Can anyone tell me the difference? Crouching medium kick scaling, yes sir. 2MK scaling, yes. Today I want to talk a little bit about scaling. So the interesting thing about this combo is they're both starting with the punish counter here, and crouching medium punch and crouching MK both actually do the same amount of damage. Every single hit in this combo is the same amount of damage in a vacuum, because the only difference is the starter with a crouching medium punch versus a crouching medium kick. But because of scaling rules, you can end up doing significantly different amounts of damage. So this combo that I showed originally, the first combo, did 2,770 damage, and with crouching MK starter instead, it did 2,450 damage. A difference of, what is that, 220? 320? And that is exasperated the more resources you end up spending in the combo, right? So if you keep spending more and more meter, that initial scaling from this option ends up doing causing more and more scaling to reduce the end damage. So my friend Holdy plays Sea Viper, and he told me he did not know about this phenomena where he was doing combos and punishes that were causing a lot of issues. So we're going to talk about scaling and why that's so important to understand some rules. It gets very complex, but we're going to generalize some things, and I want to talk about some weird exceptions and how this causes weird effects for certain characters' combo routes. The #1 thing to know about scaling is that it is a % modifier on the damage that your moves do. Every move, generally, the general rules are you start off at 100% scaling. Your move does the full base damage. So you can see in the stats here on the left side, that percentage next to the damage shows you how much scaling is currently going on in the combo. So you can see usually you start off with 100% scaling, and the general rule is every hit adds 10%, except the first hit. The first 2 hits are unscaled. So here you can see a basic 3-hit combo. You see it says 100%, 100%, 80%. While the second hit does add 10% scaling overall per that rule, you're allowed to keep 100% on those first 2 initial hits. So in a 4-hit combo, you're going to see something more like 100%, 100%, 80%, 70%, and so on and so forth until you hit a max of 10% scaling. There is a max scaling eventually, and that's the general rules. So you want to get as much damage in your combo as early as possible because of this, but then there's exceptions. We just saw how come this combo, starting from the crouching medium punch, did more damage than the crouching medium kick. Well, most heavies and most mediums allow your next hit to be 100% scaling. However, when you do things from crouching medium kicks, even if they're, you know, a special situation like Sea Viper, they automatically add a 10% scaling across the board. It doesn't matter how you operate. If you combo from a crouching medium kick, even if it's not a drive rush cancelable crouching medium kick, it adds an extra 10% scaling and you immediately get penalized. So instead of being 100, 100, you instantly go 100 to 80. And that is very impactful. That's the same scaling penalty you have for starting with lights. Light to medium immediately drops you down in the same amount. You go 100% to 80% scaling. This is why when you get big moments to punish something, like, you know, someone does an uppercut, you don't do jab to medium to start, because the whole point is you need to get the most damage possible in this moment. If you instead do a heavy to a heavy, you'll quickly get 2 100% scaling hits, and they actually do more damage. So it's definitely really important to, in these moments, start with heavies. That's kind of lame in my opinion. Well, there's good reason for that. The reason why you're penalized in that way is because finding an opening with a heavy move is generally a lot harder. When you find openings with lights, when I get a light opening, I have 3 hits to see that it hit before I convert into an unsafe sequence. So when you're doing combos and conversions, you're waiting to see if you're actually making contact with the opponent, and if you're not, then you either alter your block string or back off. For example, if they're actually blocking here the whole time, I'm obviously not going to do this, right? But if they're getting hit, I can do that. So having more hits makes it easier to tell what's going on, and therefore you're penalized by getting less damage from a lighter opening. On the inverse, like, getting a heavy is often a lot harder to land this heavy, right? They have to not be blocking or you're punishing something. So a heavier opening gives you more damage. So it kind of makes sense in that way. You have to secure bigger openings to get more damage. There obviously are exceptions, like just flailing with this with Sea Viper is pretty fucking good. But that's the general basis for the understanding. And that's why when you get these moments to punish a big old DP, you better not be wasting it on doing something like a jab, because it just completely scales your damage. And usually people do things like jab to medium when they're not prepared. So you're rewarded for being prepared for the openings that you get and going for optimal punishes. So those are 2 big rules, right? The crouching medium kick adds 20% scaling immediately, and the lights add 20% scaling immediately. So it's important to try to not start punishes or big openings with those moves. However, the next one is also super important, and this impacts a lot of conversions as well. So say you do get an opening with Sea Viper, for example, and you want to convert this. You did jab to medium because you're kind of panicking on a hit. What is the go-to option that most people do? Well, it's going to be drive rush cancel. Drive rush cancel is really good for converting from scrambly hits when you don't know what's going on, because it's plus on block and gives you a full combo on hit. But the downside of that is every hit that comes after a drive rush cancel has a 15% penalty on the scaling. So if you see this combo, this is stand medium to crouch medium, it's 100%. You would normally expect the next hit to be 80%, but instead after a drive rush cancel, it goes to 68%. And this has nothing to do with drive rush cancel or raw drive rush. Doing drive rush in the middle of a combo immediately penalizes everything else after that by 15%. You know, really scaling the combo. The upside to that is, of course, like if you're doing a lot of drive rush cancels, usually you can route into a lot of heavies that do more base damage for the scaling. And so it ends up doing a lot of damage, but there is a huge penalty for that, which can very greatly affect the amount of damage you can get out of a drive rush conversion. And there's also one more basic rule, and that's super cancels from your specials to level 3. They instantly add 10% scaling. So you see, normally you would expect after this special to go into level 3 to be 100, 100, but special cancels to level 3 always add 10% scaling. And that's normally not that big a deal, but that does have one example I can think of like a really strange side effect. So I'm going to show you a basic combo into the level 3. So it's going to be punish counter lariats into level 3. And after this, you can do medium elbow into level 3. And this combo conversion is going to do 5,160 damage. And you see the super is at 60% scaling. However, one interesting thing about this is if I do this without the medium elbow, you see now the level 3 is 80% scaling. And this combo actually does the exact same amount of damage as the one with the medium elbow added in the middle of it. Now, normally I would say that even though they do the same damage, in this situation, doing the medium elbow is still preferable because it can build you more meter. Like, you can build that sliver of super meter to get the level 3 to get the damage. But these two combos, one with less hits, literally does the exact same amount of damage because there's less scaling that you dodge by avoiding canceling into the level 3 that makes it so that that level 3 makes up for the missed damage from the special move. But this gets really weird when you go into CA range. This gets very different. So with the elbow in CA, this combo is going to do 5,460 damage at 60% scaling for the CA. However, doing it without the elbow, this version is going to end up doing 5,560 damage. This does 100 more damage with less hits, but only for CA. Because with CA doing base 250 more damage than level 3, that difference in scaling, the 80% value versus the 60%, that 20% difference in scaling actually makes up the lost damage and then some for missing out on doing the medium elbow in the combo. So this is like a really weird niche scenario where the combo routing should be different based on if you have CA or level 3, and you're getting more damage for going for CA by dodging the scaling of the special into super scaling penalty. So this is pretty niche, but this kind of stuff crops up and it can end up being the difference between like 100 damage and killing your opponent essentially. So you might want to like check your combo routing and determine the difference between CA and level 3. And if you can pull more hits out of the combo, you might do more damage in a weird, unintuitive way. Okay, so this is a lot of universal rules that are kind of complex, and there's a lot of exceptions, but the general guidelines for the scaling are actually pretty straightforward. So there's 3 main things you want to consider to end up optimizing most of your combo punishes, especially on the fly in a real match where you don't have time to perfectly optimize everything. The main thing is, of course, try to avoid starting any punishes with lights. If you're punishing a DP, if you start with a light, it's pretty much over, man. Like, you've scaled your combo so heavily, it's going to do significantly less damage than if you started with a heavy. So, of course, try to start with any kind of medium or heavy, and avoid starting with a light or a crushing medium kick. That's the #1 most important thing to get right, is the opening hit. And if you start your combo scaled, then you're going to end up doing significantly less damage. The next thing is to avoid drive rush cancel routing if you can, and route into OD moves. A lot of the characters in this game, especially like the DLC characters that kept coming out, have really good combo extension OD moves. Think of like Akuma's OD Adamant Fist, Bison OD Scissors, and even Sea Viper in general. She has a lot of ways to avoid using any drive rush cancels because she has the Seismo, and she can end up doing really strong combos like that by just completely avoiding drive rush cancel. And then it can get it to even more damage, even from light conversions into the OD. So for example, for Viper, if she gets a really light opening where she can only punish with a 4-frame, on 4-frame punish, she can go straight into heavy. And then from the heavy, she can go to medium and then into OD Seismo. So she can do something like that for 2 bars, 2,920. But if you were to do something similar, and then try to drive rush cancel, you can see my combo just did 400 less damage. And the more you dump into the combo, the further you go down the combo tree, the more you'll see the disparaging amount of damage you're gonna do if you go into a drive rush cancel. And that's why all of Sea Viper's max damage combos are something along the lines of going into OD Seismo, and then using all of her OD moves to route, and at no point do they use drive rush cancel. The drive rush cancel is simply for like maybe building super meter, or when you're not prepared for the hit. So find out what OD moves your character can route with. Sea Viper OD Seismo, Bison Scissor Kicks, Akuma Adamant Fist, A lot of characters are structured around trying to get into these OD moves to do your routing, and your scaling will be way better. The driver's cancel should be used when you're not sure about a combo conversion or to build super meter with a lot of hits. And the general rule is sometimes less is more. You generally want to get into your level 3 as fast as possible. If you don't have a lot of resources and have less meter, usually what you want to do is get right away into the OD or get right away into your super, and don't worry about spending a lot of bar. If you have a lot of meter, then dumping resources can do more damage into level 3, but the supers are max scaled out at 50, 40, and 30% for level 3, level 2, and level 1. So if you can go past a certain point and spend a lot of resources to keep the combo going, it might be worth meter dumping. But in a pinch, if you have very little meter, like, it might be worth it to just get one hit and just go straight into your level 3, like that kind of a scenario, instead of trying to stress about getting a perfect driver's cancel or anything like that. I can't even do the combo. I'm rusty with Viper. But you get the idea. Less can be more in certain situations. With Sea Viper specifically, doing things like routing from lights into the OD burn kick into level 3 is usually better than trying to do a driver's cancel conversion like this. That does 1743, and this does 1650, but it would be like if you had slightly more meter and didn't go into burnout, this could be better. So pay attention to your conversions and try to conserve meter unless you have enough meter to do a lot of hits. All right, let's get into some character-specific things, because on top of the universal rules, there's so many individual scaling rules per character that get kind of funky, and that shows up with a character like Luke. So I mentioned before how starting any combo with crouching MK immediately scales your combo. Even if you link out of it, it might be kind of hard to demo with Luke, because generally you don't combo out of it. But you see here, it goes 100 to 80, right? And so doing a driver's cancel from a crouching medium kick is pretty scaled, because you have the 20% scaling immediately added, and then also the percentage modifier 15% for driver's cancel. However, for most characters, canceling from the crouching mediums is really good, because it doesn't have that penalty. But as part of the Season 1 nerfs to Luke, Luke is paying for his Season 1 crimes, he has unique scaling on his crouching medium punch. Most characters would be at a much higher percentage at this point after the combo. Luke's at 72, and I believe with Viper, you'll be closer to 80 after a medium driver's cancel. Yeah, so with normal characters, after a crouching medium punch driver's cancel, you're at 85% scaling. But for Luke, you're actually immediately at 72%. So this ends up causing a lot of issues for Luke in his damage department from his most common opener. And that was just because they determined that this was too strong for Luke to spam. So if he goes from like heavy punch to crouching medium punch, you can see it's 85%. But medium punch to medium punch is immediately 72, really limiting his damage from that specific opener, because Capcom just wanted to punish Luke specifically. Okay, so another unique example is Jamie. Jamie is unique, and this is probably one of the biggest things that holds Jamie back is his uniqueness. And you can see here that Jamie is the only character in the game that doesn't start out with 100% damage scaling. His base damage scaling is based on his drink level. So at drink level 0, he starts with 90, and with every drink you get, it goes up by 5 for his base level. So at one drink, it's 95. And it takes him 2 drink levels before he's doing his base 100% damage scaling. And then once you get to level 4, he's actually rewarded in doing 110 base damage scaling. That's why you can see Jamie can be fun and unique in other ways, like that worst combo we looked at. Let's take a look now that we understand some of these rules and try to break down actually why this combo did so little damage. If you saw this and didn't understand what's going on, we're going to go through it in slow-mo and take a look at it. So one other rule about scaling is perfect parry immediately scales to 50%. If you don't understand that, you might be newer to Street Fighter 6, but once you get a perfect parry, everything following from there starts at 50% scaling. And you can see here, this is a Jamie in level 4 though, so it's going to do a little bit extra damage on every hit, the base scaling. So they start with a command grab. The command grab is a funny way to add more scaling because it adds 1 hit of scaling but does 0 damage. So even though it doesn't have a hit, it does count as a hit towards the scaling. So it's going to, quickly scale your combo after that. And then here you can see the next hit. It's going to do 55% because it's down from the perfect parry, but it's still above 50 because of the level 4. And then they immediately go into light to do the least amount of damage, and then the driver's cancel is going to add 15% scaling penalty. And then they're going to go into the OD into the level 2. And the level 2 is going to build back their drive gauge, which is going to allow them to do an extra driver's cancel. So light for least damage, 15% scaling penalty, 50% scaling penalty. That's not normal. Normally you can't do that much. And then light for the least amount of damage, finally into the level 1, which is at max penalty, scaling 30%. So adding the command grab and doing the level 2 to build more meter to do more driver's cancels actually has the effect of making the overall combo do even less damage. So that's a really optimal way to scale your combo to the max and spend all your resources to do as little damage as possible. And then yes, like Chad was mentioning, they're also in modern, which has a penalty for your moves doing less base damage. But what about Punk, man? What about Punk? What about these rules that we learned from the scaling? Could we apply here to solve this issue that Punk had? So Punk, he goes for the gusto. He gets the OD hooligan grab, drive rush, heavy punch, charged heavy kick drill, level 3. So now that we know some of the rules, we could potentially have some ideas of how to optimize the situation and correct the timeline and prevent Punk from popping off too soon and taking this win. Let's go ahead and go to training mode for this one. So the combo that Punk went for was drive rush, heavy punch into charge drill into the CA. And this combo is going to do, or it should do 4,128. Yeah, 4,128 damage. So can anyone tell me like what could have potentially caused issues with this combo based on the rules we just went over? Any ideas of what could have, what we could work around to make this more optimal? Remove drive rush cancel. Yeah, maybe we can try to remove the drive rush, because remember, drive rush automatically adds 15% additional scaling. So this, the other thing about this also, keep this in mind. We mentioned unique scaling things. Every character has a set of unique scaling. So if we look at what's going on here, you can see that if you just go into a special move after the hooligan grab, you're already at 70% scaling. Instead of going 100, 100, you go 100 straight to 70. And then with the way Punk went with the routing, drive rush heavy goes from 100 to 59% immediately because it has the 15% scaling penalty on top of the unique scaling from the hooligan grab. If we can find a way to either do a lot more damage with the routing he did or avoid some scaling issues, we could do more damage in this situation. Could OD be taken out or not? You have to do the OD hooligan grab. So if we try to like max cash out the resources, we could have done more damage. Here's one combo I came up with the amount of meter he had. He could have gone into the hooligan, then OD drill, and then gone into the CA. So with the amount of meter that he had, he could have squeaked out this route instead, which will do more damage, 4,466. It's more scaled, but because you're already hitting max scaling immediately, once you hit max scaling, your goal should be, how do I get as many hits in as possible to maximize the damage that I can get? So this is going on the route of, I've already spent a lot of resources, I've already hit max scaling, get as many hits as possible. And that's one way to get more damage here. However, the funny thing is about that combo he did, 4,128 damage, is raw CA does do more damage. Just barely. This does 4,150, which does 22 more damage than doing the combo that Punk did. 22 damage is very little. I honestly do not know if this sliver of life that XiaoHai had is 22. It might be. So that might have been enough alone, just raw CA to kill. It probably would have killed. 22 damage is very little, but it's enough to make the difference between moving on in a world championship tournament or, going to losers. So that is one very important key distinction there. However, here's the funny thing. I found this route that you could have done as well, and it's also meterless. I like this route. Light drill, link to CA, 4,260 damage, and meterless. You can do this if you go into burnout, and this does the most damage. And I really like this option because it incorporates a lot of the scaling rules we talked about. It avoids any drive rush penalty, so no 15% penalty, and it avoids the level 3 cancel from special penalty of 10%. So this gives you 1 extra hit, and it's 70% on the drill and 60% on the CA. So you have the CA doing more damage from its base damage, and you have the additional hit of the drill itself. So either one of these options, I think this would have been the best combo to go for. The light drill into CA, in my opinion, does the most damage, and it's meterless as well and very simple. So if Punk had these options in his back pocket and had labbed this and was prepared, he definitely could have won that. But instead, he went with a comfort combo, which unintentionally scaled the combo more significantly. This combo takes more hits, more meter, more resources, and does less damage than just simply doing the meterless basic options with less hits in front of it. So that's why it's important to know your scaling rules, know the general rules for the game, and then know your character specific stuff. It can be pretty unintuitive once you get into the weeds with your specific characters, but these things really do matter and can be the difference between you winning your games and losing them in a very painful opportunity like Punk did. So learn from our mistakes, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.